Imagine setting out on a journey to the coldest, harshest, most dangerous continent on Earth. A place where the temperature can drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Where snowstorms rage without mercy, and where the icy ocean can crush any ship in its path. On the 4th of November in 1914, a British ship named Endurance sailed into this frozen nightmare. Aboard were 28 brave souls led by the fearless explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton. His goal? To do what no man had ever done before, to walk across the entire continent of Antarctica. And yes, in a time with no GPS, no smartphones, no satellite navigation, and no modern rescue technology, he wanted to cross 2,900 kilometers of ice. A journey that should have taken 120 days on paper, but fate had other plans. The Endurance first stopped at a whaling station on South Georgia Island on 5th November in 1914. This was the last human settlement before the icy unknown. Look at the map. Just south of these islands lies the jagged edge of Antarctica with the Weddell Sea beside it. A treacherous sea surrounded by ice on 3 sides where the ice doesn't flow freely. The warnings were clear. Locals and sailors advised Shackleton to wait, to delay this expedition because the sea was already treacherous. But Shackleton was determined. He pressed forward, ignoring the danger. By 5th December 1914, Endurance was moving forward, but the crew's worst fears came true. The ice was thicker, denser, and more brutal than expected. They tried to navigate through it, but by the 18th January in 1915, the ship was completely trapped. Days later, the crew spotted a 15-foot wide chasm in the ice, a slim hope of escape. They tried to push the ship through it at full speed, but Endurance didn't move an inch. Desperate, the men jumped out and hacked at the ice with their tools, but all in vain. The ice sheet began drifting away from the land, taking their dreams away with it. Their destination, Wassel Bay, was now 60 miles away. Water separated the ice from the land, making it impossible to simply walk ashore. Weeks turned into months. Winter approached. 24 hours of darkness, unending cold and violent snowstorms. Shackleton ordered the crew to stay on the ship to endure the winter. But the ice kept pressing, cracking, and crushing Endurance. Aboard was Frank Hurley, the photographer who captured the terrifying scene. Ice bending around the ship, cracks spreading like veins, and the wooden vessel straining under immense pressure. By 30th September 1915, cracks were visible, but the crew hadn't lost hope. Then on 24th October 1914 at 6:45 p.m., a massive piece of ice hit Endurance. Water began pouring in. The crew pumped tirelessly for 3 days, but the ice pressed harder than they could fight. Temperatures were at minus 8.5 degrees Celsius. The water freezing around them. Finally, Shackleton made the hardest decision of his life. The crew had to abandon the ship. By 27th October, the ice had broken the ship apart. The stern rose 20 feet. The rudder broke, and the front filled with water. Luckily, the crew was already safe on the ice. Endurance, the dream of crossing Antarctica, was gone. Now, survival was the only goal. The men were stranded on a floating ice sheet in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean without radios, telephones, or any way to call for help. No form of communication. They set up a camp on the ice, checking their belongings: 3 small boats, a sledge, some personal items, and only 1 month's ration of food. There was barely space to sleep. Many huddled together to avoid freezing. They were isolated from the rest of the world for over a year. Shackleton's faith in his skills and experience was all they had. But faith alone couldn't bring food or warmth. He calculated the nearest land, Paulet Island, 550 kilometers away, where some rescue supplies had been left 12 years earlier by a Swedish expedition, supplies that Shackleton himself had helped provide. The crew decided to move across the ice. Shackleton limited each person to 2 pounds of essential gear. They left behind gold coins, books, and even some photographic negatives, keeping only what was critical for survival. They were forced to make unimaginable sacrifices. Even their puppies were killed to provide food. And then, summer returned to Antarctica. Melting the ice and making it soft and treacherous. Pulling boats and sledges across it was excruciating. After hours of effort, they had moved only 1 mile. They had to wait for the ice to float closer to land, and Shackleton named their temporary refuge Ocean Camp. By 21st November 1915, Endurance sank completely, leaving only the ice sheet as a fragile home. Days turned into months, and new challenges arose. The ice sheet drifted east, away from Paulet Island. Shackleton decided to leave Ocean Camp, but soon faced thin ice and open water, forcing another temporary camp. Food shortages became severe. They served on 1 biscuit per day, small amounts of milk, cocoa, and high-fat meat paste. They hunted seals and penguins for survival. Shackleton often lied about food quantities to keep morale high. Mental strength was as important as physical survival. On the 7th of April in 1916, they spotted Clarence Island, 83 kilometers away, giving hope. But the wind shifted, pushing them further east into open water. The ice sheet shrank dangerously, leaving barely 50 meters of solid ice. Shackleton had no choice. The crew had to board the 3 small boats for the final journey to Elephant Island, 50 kilometers away. 15th April 1916. After 497 days, the crew finally stood on solid ground. After being trapped by ice, battered by storms, and starving for months, they survived the impossible. But problems remained. Some crew members were injured. Blackborough's leg was paralyzed. Rickinson suffered a heart attack. And Elephant Island was desolate, uninhabited, and unreachable. Shackleton had to rescue the remaining 22 crew members. He chose a dangerous route, South Georgia Island, 1,300 kilometers away, requiring a crossing of the deadly Drake Passage. Only 5 men, including Shackleton, took a small boat to secure help. The journey was harrowing. Waves tossed the boat. Food and water were scarce. The men were drenched, vomiting, freezing, and exhausted. Winter had begun. Sunlight was limited, making navigation even harder. Every day was a fight against death itself. Finally, on 10th May 1916, they reached South Georgia Island. But the island was long, and they had landed on the wrong side. The whaling station was still 100 kilometers away. Across mountains no human had ever crossed. The damaged boat couldn't take them further. Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean decided to walk over the mountains without tents, sleeping bags, or any maps. Snow up to their knees, icy peaks hiding the path, 36 hours of climbing and crawling through impossible terrain at times. The only way forward was to cut steps into solid ice. On 20th May 1916, they finally reached the Stromness whaling station, completing a feat unimaginable even for modern climbers. Shackleton was unrecognizable. Beards long, faces blackened, clothes torn, but their courage, determination, and teamwork had succeeded. Next, Shackleton rescued the 22 crew members on Elephant Island. After months of waiting, they were found alive, having survived cold, hunger, and despair. Shackleton had left with 28 people, and he returned with all 28 alive. This story is the greatest tale of human survival ever recorded. Leadership, courage, teamwork, and unbreakable will made the impossible possible. And even today, Shackleton's ship Endurance was found in the Weddell Sea 106 years later, remarkably preserved. And if you visit South Georgia Island, you'll find Shackleton's grave, a reminder of his bravery and sacrifice. Shackleton didn't cross Antarctica, but he achieved something much greater. He brought his men back alive against all odds. His story teaches us that mental strength, courage, and teamwork can overcome even the most extreme challenges. If this story inspired you, remember, challenges in life are like Antarctica, harsh, dangerous, and unpredictable. But with courage and determination, survival is always possible.